I never imagined my whole life could shift on a single afternoon. I remember thinking the day I glanced at my phone, half distracted by customers browsing in my cozy boutique. That was when the message arrived, so casually cruel it nearly made me drop a silk scarf. Ava, I'm done with all of this. I've met someone new. Brittany is only 20, but she makes me feel alive again. Oh, and I've already emptied our joint account. Have fun with that little store of yours, Grandma. I blinked in astonishment, calmly pressing the phone against the polished wooden counter before turning to help Mrs. Patterson, who wanted to see the latest chiffon shawls. My name is Ava Wilcox, and I was 38 on the day my husband ended our 12-year marriage by text. Outside, cars drove by in a blur, while inside, my quiet little shop offered a comforting familiarity that buffered me from everything Derek's words implied. His remarks stung more than I expected, especially the blithe way he tacked on Grandma, as though I was decades older. Even as I showed Mrs. Patterson 3 different scarves, I felt tension gather behind my eyes, yet I refused to let my hands tremble or my voice crack. As soon as she left, clutching her new purchase in our signature gold wrapping, I locked the door with equal parts composure and silent fury. My mind returned to Derek's text, and the possibility that every suspicion I'd been harboring had just flared into reality. I wanted to fling my phone across the floor, but I didn't. Instead, I forced myself to read his message again. Moving to Miami, emptied the account. The callousness took my breath away. I considered how Derek had been slowly erasing parts of our marriage for months, maybe even a year. His gym habit that sprang up out of nowhere, those late nights at the office with no corresponding increase in his paychecks, the secretive phone use and sudden social media locks. Every sign had built upon the last. 3 months earlier, I'd found a dinner receipt for two at a fancy restaurant on a night he'd insisted he was at work, finishing a big project. I'll never forget standing in our kitchen, smoothing the crumpled piece of paper and seeing 2 entrees, 2 desserts, a romantic bottle of wine. His name was on the credit card slip. In hindsight, it was such a small clue compared to the bombshell he texted me that day, but it signaled the unraveling of the life we had shared. That night, after discovering the dinner receipt, I quietly opened a second bank account at an entirely different institution. The next week, I accepted Derek's suggestion to combine our finances for convenience, nodding in feigned excitement. In reality, I was funneling my personal earnings and nest egg into this fresh account, leaving only enough in the joint fund to appear normal. Each deposit and withdrawal I made to the new bank was done with methodical care, creating layers of security I never dreamed I would need. Deep down, though, I knew Derek was heading down a destructive path, and I refused to be collateral damage. I read his text again before typing a response, a simple, "good luck." Inside, I was vibrating with shock, but outwardly, I was the picture of serenity, double-checking that day's sales numbers. He imagined me sobbing, I was sure of it. I pictured Derek grinning triumphantly, assuming I was heartbroken and clueless. While he gloated, I methodically turned off the row of boutique lights and flipped the sign to closed. The merging gloom hinted at a new chapter in my life, one I intended to manage on my own terms. A second text buzzed through, more mocking than the first. "Don't bother begging. Brittany and I leave tomorrow. I might send for my stuff later." I let out a derisive laugh. He honestly believed I'd crumble at the sight of his younger fling? Brittany. She was his company's new receptionist. I'd met her once at an office holiday party, that awkward moment when she giggled a bit too loudly and let her hand wander to Derek's shoulder whenever she beckoned him closer. I'd felt annoyance spike through me then, but brushed it aside, certain Derek wouldn't stoop so low. Now, she was apparently his future. I gave no reply, simply strode across the polished parquet floor of my boutique and reached for my keys. That was enough for one day. It was time to finalize a plan of action, one I had been cautiously crafting in secret. A few months back, I'd consulted an attorney, just in case. It felt surreal stepping into that lawyer's elegant office the first time, but after verifying Derek's fishy expenses, I knew I wasn't overreacting. My attorney, Naomi Parker, had listened sympathetically as I described the half-truths and the lingering suspicion. "Get your records in order," she advised, "and wait for him to make the first move." Now he had, and it was time for me to make mine. That evening, the weight of Derek's betrayal pressed on me, but there was also an odd sense of relief. Surrounded by neatly arranged racks of new dresses and carefully curated accessories, I felt safe. This store, which Derek had once mocked, was my fortress. Its success was due entirely to my dedication and vision, not his. He often groused about the many hours I spent designing new displays or attending trade shows. He dismissed it as a cute passion project, never bothering to grasp how much revenue it generated. John, my longtime accountant, had congratulated me last year on exceeding Derek's income. I had only told Derek once, in passing, and he'd rolled his eyes. Clearly, the true value of this boutique soared miles above what Derek had cared to understand. One final time that night, I glanced at my phone to see Derek's parting jabs light up the screen. "You're almost 40, Ava. Enjoy your little shop while you can. You'll never keep up with me and Britney." Oh, the arrogance. I texted Naomi in crisp language. "It's time." He made his move. She promptly called me back, her voice decisive. "The divorce papers are ready," she said. "We'll file as soon as morning comes. Shall I request an injunction on the account he emptied?" My shoulders relaxed as I stared at the glinting rows of shoes lining my display shelves. "Yes," I said calmly. "Let's do it." Before leaving, I quickly updated inventory and sent a message to Rosalie, my assistant manager, about the next day's new arrivals. Once I got home, I stepped into a kitchen that felt abruptly unfamiliar. Gone was the sense of shared meal prep, replaced by an echo that underscored Derek's absence. My phone beeped with yet another message, so I forced myself to read it. "I know this stings, but face it, you can't compete with a woman half your age." My cheeks flamed red, but not with sorrow, more like righteous anger. For a moment, I felt that familiar ache of betrayal. Then I thought of the house, my grandmother's house, that Derek had always insisted we should retitle in both our names. He had whined that it would be more equitable if he was on the deed. I'd just never gotten around to it. Now, thank goodness for laziness. I opened the file cabinet in the study and extracted the manila folders containing everything my lawyer might need: receipts, statements, screenshots. I'd carefully saved every suspicious text, every dinner tab that didn't add up, every invoice for unexplained work events. I discovered my grandmother's old wedding album, too, with pictures of her and my grandfather posing in the backyard that was now mine. I remembered the day Derek had declared that putting the house solely in my name was unfair, how he insisted we had to share all property. Something had told me to hold off. Did he think I was that naive? My phone buzzed yet again, but I didn't flinch. I concluded the day by pouring myself a glass of the most expensive wine we had, ignoring the memory of Derek complaining I rarely bought anything nice for the house. He blamed me for being frugal, but that frugality had always been about building stable ground for myself. As I took the first luxurious sip, I felt a glimmer of victory in the back of my mind, like a gentle whisper telling me that things would be all right. Morning dawned with a crisp blue sky outside my bedroom window. I dressed for work in my go-to black pencil skirt and burgundy blouse. If Derek believed his departure would disrupt my life, he was about to be gravely mistaken. On the drive over, I called Naomi, her phone crackling in the early hush. "Yes, I'm hitting the courthouse at 9 sharp, she informed me. "By noon, expect some good news," she added in that calm, confident tone I already trusted. As I parked, coffee in hand, I saw a new text from Derek while walking up to unlock the glass door of the boutique. "Don't even try to block my last transactions. Brittany and I are officially on our way." I said nothing in reply, just forwarded it to Naomi. My staff bustled in, oblivious at first to the personal drama swirling around me. People often assume a newly separated woman will be a trembling wreck, snapping at employees or sobbing in the storeroom, but I felt oddly composed. Maybe it was adrenaline, maybe the satisfaction that I'd been preparing for this scenario for months. When Rosalie gave me an update on new merchandise, I nodded, fully engaged in business mode. My boutique was about to host an exclusive trunk show for a local designer, and the last thing I needed was to crumple under stress. Cliffhanger. What would happen with Derek's overblown sense of triumph once he realized you can't just steal joint funds without consequence? Around mid-morning, I stepped aside to call the bank, politely inquiring about the empty account. The representative needed no prompting to confirm that, yes, a large withdrawal had been made the day before. She asked if I wanted to report fraudulent activity. I hesitated, only because part of me wanted to finalize instructions with my lawyer. After a brief pause, I asked the representative to hold the line while I typed Naomi a quick message. Naomi replied instantly, "Notify them of possible fraud. I'll do the rest." With that, I told the bank representative, "Yes, I'd like to begin a claim. There is clear evidence of an unauthorized transaction. I have the text messages showing he intended to drain our account for personal use with another person." My stomach lurched just saying it out loud, but I pressed on. A hush fell around me after I hung up, but my staff kept working, noticing only that I had a more determined look than usual. As lunchtime approached, the store began to fill with lively chatter, the hum of ruffling fabric, and the quiet beep of the cash register. My heart hammered from lingering anger, but each new sale brought me comfort, reminding me I wasn't powerless. Still, the tension built, fueled by Derek's final jab. "We'll talk when I get back. Maybe you can keep the house a while, but the boutique's half mine. Don't fight it." I took a cleansing breath. Let him believe whatever he wants, I thought. Let Derek and Britney brag about their flight to Miami, their plush hotel. Let them savor their illusions of an easy victory. By the end of the day, Naomi would have the financial freeze in motion, and soon enough, Derek would receive a rude awakening. To be continued. Morning traffic was light, allowing me a moment of calm as I rehearsed the day's agenda in my head. Inside my boutique, a steady hum of conversation rose from customers browsing cleanly arranged displays of dresses, handbags, and the newest accessories. Rosalie waved me over to finalize some paperwork, then moved aside as my phone buzzed insistently. I had braced myself for more taunts from Derek, but this time the unknown number turned out to be his mother, Alana. She wasted no time pelting me with accusations. Derek had told her I was a control freak, that my vindictive nature was sabotaging his trip to Miami. "He's stranded at the airport," she said in a hushed tone, "because the airline won't accept the tickets. Did you really report them as fraudulent?" For a second, I let my gaze flick around the shop, checking that nobody overheard. Customers lingered at the shoe display, oblivious to my jolt of tension. Then I ducked into my tiny office, glassed off from the main floor. "He used our joint card after emptying our joint account," I said evenly. "And he did it to fund a personal getaway with Britney. That isn't exactly legal, Alana." On the other end, I heard her sigh. Though she still tried to defend her son, it was clear a swirl of confusion plagued her. "Derek said you were probably crying your eyes out. Were you ever cold to him? Because he claims he had no choice but to leave." Exasperation flared in my chest. "I'm not sure how that justifies cleaning out our account," I answered. "Anyway, I have no intention of arguing. If you want the truth, I can forward the screenshots." Her heavy silence told me that Derek likely hadn't explained the extent of his wrongdoing. After a long pause, Alana mumbled a quick goodbye and hung up. Outside the office door, a wave of chatter moved through the Fab boutique as if nothing had happened. Those carefree women had no idea that the store's owner was fending off an attempted financial ambush from a husband who had jetted off with a woman half his age. My heart clenched, but I refused to let it show. Instead, I rejoined Rosalie to cut a neat length of ribbon for a customer's purchase and ring up a gorgeous evening dress. I smiled politely, answered questions, and kept my composure. While I handed over the shopping bag, another text popped up. I flicked a glance at my phone, expecting Derek again, but the name on my screen read Naomi Parker. Her message was concise, yet brimming with promise. "Court order in motion, hearing set for Monday morning. Be ready! My pulse leapt. An emergency hearing meant we could legally freeze all questionable funds and block Derek from draining any other resources we jointly shared. It also spelled trouble for him if he ignored or tried to circumvent the order. I quickly tapped back. Understood, thank you. A moment later, I was answering the store phone. This time it was Alana again, more flustered than before. Claire from the airline says Derek can't get his refund, she blurted. He's accusing you of sabotaging him. I resisted an urge to laugh. Alana, I said quietly, he stole my money to pay for that flight, so I'm not sure how he's surprised the refund isn't forthcoming. This felt like a conversation with a stranger, not with the woman who had once insisted she loved me like a daughter. He says you're trying to humiliate him, she protested. He's desperate. He asked us for money. Could you at least negotiate something? He claims you two can discuss settlement if you stop freezing accounts. I nearly dropped the phone. Derek had the nerve to talk about negotiations from an airport lounge, presumably with Britney sulking nearby. But I kept my voice gentle. I'm following legal advice. Any questions? Direct them to my attorney. This is no longer a mere domestic quarrel, Alana. After we ended the call, I flicked through a series of texts that had arrived in quick succession from Derek himself. They echoed the fury his mother had just relayed. Why are you doing this? So petty, he demanded. Then, you can't undo our marriage with a snap of your fingers. I'm entitled to half. His arrogance would have been comical if it weren't so destructive. Reading his belligerent messages, I realized each one was further proof of his misdeeds, the audacity to claim ownership of a business he once called a tiny vanity project. Barely an hour passed before Naomi texted again, letting me know she'd received everything she needed to show the judge Derek's admission of guilt in writing. Keep collecting any new evidence, she advised. The stronger our record of his conduct, the better. I forwarded every toxic text, every mocking comment. Each flaming arrow he shot my way only strengthened the case against him. The irony was thick. He wanted me distraught, in disarray, yet his malicious words were forging the legal weapon that would sink him. By late afternoon, customer traffic slowed enough for me to read new gossip swirling online. One of Derek's colleagues posted a photo, Britney and Derek looking distressed at an airport Starbucks, half hidden behind suitcases. The caption was an unsubtle dig. When your grand plan gets canceled and mom's credit card is your only plan B. I inhaled sharply, torn between anger and a pang of pity. Derek had wreaked havoc, yet seeing him reduced to mooching off family felt jarring. That pity, though, evaporated the instant I recalled my emptied bank account and the triumphant "ha-ha" he texted along with it. I pulled my shoulders back, busying myself with rechecking the day's receipts. Outside, the waning afternoon light stretched across the sidewalk, a soft glow on the boutique windows. In just a few days, Derek would stand in front of a judge, forced to answer for what he'd done. Would he feel remorse? Or would it be one more chance to play the victim, blame me, blame the system, blame anyone but himself? I glanced at the phone, half expecting another barrage of text messages. Instead, I found a single short note from Naomi. He's about to learn actions have consequences. To be continued. Monday arrived with a rush of adrenaline. I slipped on a sleek navy suit and allowed myself one extra moment in the mirror, reminding my reflection that I'd spent months quietly planning for this confrontation. Naomi met me at the courthouse steps, her expression steady and reassuring, even as a wave of lawyers and anxious faces crowded the marble lobby. Across the atrium, I spotted Derek pacing with some worn-out man in a crumpled suit, presumably his last-minute attorney. Even at this distance, my soon-to-be ex looked rattled, cheeks reddened from either anger or embarrassment. Before I could speak to Naomi, Derek abruptly stalked over, ignoring the disappointed attorney trailing behind him. "You won't get away with this," he snapped, voice lowered to keep prying ears at bay. "You froze accounts I have every right to. Don't you realize how petty that makes you look?" I breathed in, squaring my shoulders. "Your actions led us here," I replied calmly. "You want to blame someone? Try looking in the mirror." He opened his mouth for a cutting remark, But Naomi smoothly stepped between us, reminding him the judge wouldn't appreciate any scene in the hallway. Just minutes later, we were in a formal hearing room, lights humming overhead. The judge, a stern woman with silver-streaked hair, ran through standard legal preambles. Then Naomi laid out our evidence with crisp precision: Derek's text messages describing how he'd emptied our joint account, his admission of using the shared credit card to finance what he called a clean break, and screenshots revealing his boastful mockery of my so-called grandma status. At each revelation, I snuck a glance at Derek, who winced but couldn't refute his own words. When Derek's attorney finally spoke, he attempted to paint me as manipulative, someone who prepared a secret scheme to catch Derek off guard. But Naomi rained down the receipts I'd collected, methodically dismantling the defense. The judge's disapproving stare focused on Derek. "You conceded your intent to drain marital funds," she said, tapping a highlighted document. "Did you think those texts could be easily explained away?" Derek mumbled something about me overreacting, but the judge raised a hand for silence. "Financial misconduct isn't trivial," she said firmly. Then, she ordered that all remaining shared funds be frozen until final settlements were decided. Furthermore, Derek was instructed to return the drained portion within 48 hours or face heavy penalties. A ripple of tension spread across the small crowd of onlookers. The hearing ended almost as swiftly as it began, leaving Derek glowering. His fleeting bravado had dissolved under the judge's orders. Afterward, in the hallway, Naomi exchanged a satisfied nod with me. But there was little time to revel. Derek confronted us again, voice vibrating with suppressed rage. "I can't pay it back if I don't have it," he muttered. "Britney and I used it on plane tickets, hotel reservations, stuff that's non-refundable now thanks to your sabotage." Naomi answered calmly, "That isn't my client's concern. The court is clear. You have 2 days." His flustered lawyer managed to steer him away at last, leaving me there with my pulse still pounding. Part of me felt a tiny sting of guilt, seeing him so frantic and defeated. After all, we'd shared more than a decade of marriage. Still, guilt melted when I remembered his text jibes, his condescending smirks. This outcome wasn't about punishing him forever. It was about protecting myself from a man who believed he could walk all over me. Until now. On the courthouse steps, the morning sun washed over me, an odd sense of lightness replacing the dread I'd carried. My phone chimed, pulling me back to the present. It was Alana again, leaving an urgent voicemail. She needed to talk. I sighed, wondering whether to ignore it. Instead, I pressed play. Her voice crackled with thinly veiled tension. "Ava, things are bad. He's in total denial. Thinks he can undo the freeze by calling in favors. Please call me back?" I turned briskly to Naomi, who'd just wrapped up a conversation with a colleague. "Alana's distressed," I murmured. She gave me a thin smile. "They're learning Derek isn't bulletproof," she said. "You've done your part. Focus on what's next." I thanked her and made my way to the parking lot. Despite the judge's official stance, I knew Derek wouldn't stop trying to manipulate the narrative. As I pulled out of my spot, I considered lunch, maybe a small treat to celebrate clearing the first legal hurdle. On the drive, I muted my phone, ignoring the repeated buzz of calls from Alana, and likely from Derek himself. Let them wait. Halfway to my favorite cafe, a swirl of old memories caught me off guard. The day Derek first encouraged me to launch my store, swearing he believed in my dream. It was sweet talk, but never once did he lift a finger or show any genuine respect for how the business blossomed. I remembered the first time he called the shop a money pit, despite my steady profits and repeated reinvestment. That recollection stiffened my resolve. The illusions of support had evaporated, replaced by quick glances at the harsh reality. He had never seen my achievements as equals to his own. After a quick meal, I slipped into a seat by the cafe window. Sunlight made the edges of my coffee cup gleam. Naomi's text buzzed. "We can file for exclusive control of the property soon. Ready?" I savored one more sip before replying, "Absolutely." Beneath the table, my foot tapped with restless energy. Derek would scramble, shout, make excuses, but the law was no longer on his side, especially not after the stunts he'd pulled. I wanted to call my mother, to tell her how months of subtle tension had exploded at last. Yet I also craved a moment of silence. Let me savor this small victory. Later that afternoon, I strolled into my shop with a subdued glow of confidence. Rosalie caught my eye, tilting her head as if to ask, "Any news?" I gave a discreet thumbs up, and she smiled in return. We had a trunk show coming in 2 days, and I wanted everything perfect. Rumors about my situation had started drifting among regulars, fueling curiosity. Sometimes, a friend or longtime customer would lean in and whisper, "I heard you're going through a tough time. You doing okay?" I forced a polite smile, never giving away the full drama. When closing time neared, I noticed a shadowy figure hovering by the window display. My pulse jumped, worried Derek might try an unannounced confrontation. But the door chime soon parted for Alana, wearing a tense expression. She stood in the center of the showroom, clinging to her purse strap as if it were a lifeline. "Please," she breathed, "can we talk?" For a moment, I wanted to turn her away. Yet I respected her enough to hear whatever was burning inside. As I locked the door and flipped the sign to closed, she looked me straight in the eye, tears brimming. "He doesn't understand what he's done," she whispered. "He's unraveling. I'm afraid he'll do something desperate." A flicker of sympathy moved through my chest, but I steadied my voice. "Your son created this mess, Alana. I can't protect him from himself." She seemed lost for words, scanning rows of new handbags that glittered beneath ceiling lights. "He keeps telling us you planned everything, that you lured him into a trap." A hollow laugh escaped me. "He lured himself. I just made sure I was safe." Alana's eyes shone with remorse, and I recalled our happier times, family barbecues, birthdays spent side by side. That life felt distant. She glanced at the door, resignation in her posture. "If you need to serve more papers, he's staying at our house," she admitted, voice trembling. "He said he has nowhere else to go. Britney's staying with a friend while she sorts out her own troubles." My eyebrows lifted slightly at that revelation. Without further words, Alana seemed to sense the conversation was over. She slipped out into the darkening street, leaving me alone amid the soft hum of the boutique's lights, the air laden with the scent of expensive leather. And I couldn't help but wonder how far Derek might fall, and how soon. To be continued. I stood there long after Alana left, replaying our conversation. At first, I expected relief that the confrontation was over, but an unsettling heaviness lingered. My eyes drifted to the nearest shelf, where elegant handbags glimmered under the lights, each meticulously arranged. The daily routine of running my boutique had always offered me a sense of refuge, yet tonight felt different, as if Derek's chaos had seeped in and taken root. In an effort to refocus, I began a slow walk through the store, straightening dresses on their hangers, checking that our glass cases were locked. The boutique needed to look immaculate for the upcoming trunk show. Despite the swirl of personal drama, business couldn't falter. Customers were not to sense a single tremor beneath my calm exterior. My phone chimed, tearing me from my thoughts. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail. Then I saw Naomi's name. Her voice was crisp, her words cutting through the hush. "Just got a notice from Derek's lawyer. They're calling for a mediation. Apparently, he thinks it's the fastest route to reclaim the funds." A bitter laugh escaped me. "He still refuses to see that he's the one who took my money," Naomi murmured. "They're probably panicking. You're under no obligation to agree, not unless you want to hash things out away from a courtroom." I exhaled, palm resting on a glass counter that contained limited edition jewelry. "Let's see what Monday's hearing grants us," I said. "If I'm expected to endure a negotiation where he demands ownership of my boutique, it's pointless." She paused momentarily. "I'll stall them. Keep me posted if anything changes." I thanked her before ending the call, my breath catching. Derek wanted to force me into a corner, But he was the one rapidly running out of options. Determined to clear my head, I stepped into the back office and reviewed next week's deliveries. Detailed schedules of new inventory gave me something tangible to focus on. Journals, invoices, price lists. What a stark contrast to the emotional whirlwind beyond these walls. Here, my life was neatly catalogued. Every package had a place, every box was accounted for. I thrived on that clarity. The rest of my world, at least for now, was shadowed by Derek's reckless choices. Let him flail and blame me. My feet were planted firmly on solid ground. The next day brought an unexpected visitor. Amanda, Derek's younger sister. She slipped into the boutique late in the afternoon, scanning the racks with obvious curiosity. I braced for another round of family pressure, but her expression was more concerned than angry. "Ava," she said softly, "this place is gorgeous. I never realized how much effort you put into it." I smiled politely, guiding her to a corner where the new arrivals hung. She ran her fingertips over the fine fabric. "Listen," she ventured. "Mom said you spoke to her. She's worried about Derek, but I just wanted to— Well, I wanted to see how you're holding up. It can't be easy." Those last words wobbled something in my chest. Nobody in Derek's family had truly asked me how I felt. "I'm managing," I replied gently, resisting the urge to pour out every frustration. "It's been an adjustment." Amanda nodded, gaze trailing the pattern on a fitted blouse. "I want you to know, I understand if you don't trust me, but I've seen Derek change these past few months. He's in denial about everything that's gone wrong in his life, and Mom—" She hesitated. "Mom always tried to patch up problems without making him accept responsibility." That revelation sparked memories of earlier times, hints that Derek had a habit of dodging blame. Maybe I just hadn't seen how deep it ran. I returned Amanda's tentative look and said, "I appreciate your honesty. I only wish things hadn't reached this point." She offered a sad smile. "So do I." She glanced around again, clearly impressed with my success. "Don't let him steal this from you," she added quietly. "He'll promise anything to get back what he squandered." I nodded grimly. "I won't." Amanda left with a small purchase, a pastel scarf she insisted on paying for in full. "This is beautiful," she murmured at the register, and I sensed the transaction wasn't about the item. It was her gesture of solidarity. "Thanks," I whispered, handing her the bag. Shortly after, Rosalie hurried to my side with an uneasy expression. "Ava, you might want to see this." She led me to her phone, where a new social media post from Britney displayed images of an empty suitcase, an airport terminal, and some cryptic caption about unfair laws and legal nightmares. The handful of comments suggested Derek had been cut off financially and was lashing out online. "Looks like she's tired of the drama," Rosalie observed softly. I couldn't help feeling a flicker of grim satisfaction. Let them talk. The more Derek posted or vented, the clearer his selfishness became. Customers had been whispering about him for days, some offering cautious sympathy, others launching into stories about men they knew who pulled similarly reckless stunts. I was discovering a kinship with women who'd faced the same kind of betrayal. One longtime client, a friendly older woman named Paula, had once confided, "My ex thought he was clever too, until the judge got a good look at him." When the boutique emptied out for the day, I locked the doors and took inventory one last time. Outside, dust settled over the street, faint gold light flickering in the sky. My phone pinged with a message from Naomi, prompting a fresh jolt of tension. They want an urgent mediation tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., at their lawyer's office. I stared at the words, measuring my pulse. Derek was scrambling indeed. Without hesitation, I typed back, "Tell them I'll attend on one condition: no last-minute demands to seize my shop, and no intimidation. If they can't agree, I'm not going." Naomi replied at once, "Done." I doubt they'll budge, but we'll see. A slow breath left my lungs. Another day, another forced confrontation. I retrieved my keys, flicked off the lights, and stepped out onto the sidewalk. The chill of early evening wove around me as I locked the glass door behind me. A single street lamp glow fell across the sign for my boutique, a reminder of what I'd built, and a warning of what Derek would try to destroy. The following morning, the law firm's waiting room smelled faintly of old leather chairs and coffee. I arrived a few minutes early, deliberately composed. Derek scowled from across the room, leaning against the wall with his arms folded. I gave him a curt nod. He didn't return it. A moment later, Naomi led me into a cramped conference space, urging me to take a seat. On the other side sat Derek's attorney, tapping a pen nervously, and Derek himself, eyes brimming with annoyance. He looked tired, as though sleep had abandoned him for days. Mediation started politely enough, each lawyer reciting the objective: reach some agreement on temporary financial arrangements. Then Derek launched into a tirade of complaints, rattling off how my backhanded tactics had left him broke, how he deserved certain marital assets. I maintained a cool facade, letting Naomi's measured tone dispel each falsehood. At one point, Derek waved his phone in the air, as if it contained proof of my misdeeds. "She planned all this! Look at her sneaky credit card statements!" he yelled, but the mediator calmly reminded him that my separate account was allowed by law, especially once he'd begun hiding his own transactions. As the argument escalated, I glanced at Derek's trembling shoulders. Behind his anger, I glimpsed something close to fear. The mediator tried to coax us toward a compromise, but Derek's demands were so outlandish. He actually insisted on half my boutique's profits, presumably forever. Even his own lawyer cleared his throat, looking embarrassed. Naomi stood firm, highlighting that the business was founded separately, with clear documentation to prove it. The mediator's effort to find a middle ground fell flat. To be continued. Spectators in the small conference room shifted uncomfortably, sensing no real hope for an amicable solution. Derek's lawyer attempted to steer him into reason, but Derek pressed on with impossible expectations. He grabbed a nearby water bottle, twisting its cap so hard his knuckles went taut. Meanwhile, Naomi kept calmly restating the facts. My boutique was established before our marriage, funded entirely with my personal savings, and never once shared with Derek beyond the most basic financial discussions. We had receipts for every investment, meticulously itemized in spreadsheets. His lawyer's frustration was plain, but Derek would not let go of the fantasy that he deserved part of something I had built alone. Finally, the mediator cleared his throat. "It's evident we're not making progress with these demands right now," he said, his voice weary. "I suggest we table certain items, like ownership of the boutique, and focus on pressing matters, such as the return of funds to the joint account." Naomi nodded in agreement, but Derek folded his arms stiffly. "I'm telling you, that money's gone," he spat, sounding more desperate than combative. "We used it for the trip, and thanks to her meddling, I can't get it back." At that, Naomi opened a folder of credit card statements and text transcripts. "You didn't just book plane tickets, Derek," she noted. "You also paid for restaurant meals, an upgraded rental car, and expensive spa visits for two. The partial refunds from the canceled hotel did not return to the joint account. Where's that money?" A hush fell as Derek's lawyer studied the documents, brow crimped in surprise. Derek glared at me, words stuck behind his clenched teeth. The mediator, regaining composure, repeated that we should address the most urgent issues first. He hammered out a temporary agreement. Derek would provide proof of how he spent the remaining funds and follow the judge's directive to repay whatever he could. The mediator strongly advised him to abide by the court's instructions or risk harsher penalties at the final divorce trial. By the time the meeting adjourned, Derek's shoulders were slumped, his anger giving way to something bordering on resignation. I stepped out into the hallway, inhaling the corridor's stale air and avoiding his gaze. Naomi gathered her files, leading me toward the exit. Behind us, Derek's voice rose, snapping at his lawyer about my trickery. I caught a hint of sorrow in that tirade. He was daring to feel betrayed, as if I'd orchestrated this entire downfall. Let him think that if it soothed his pride. All I knew was that he had lined up every domino that eventually toppled him. Exiting into the bright day felt disorienting after so much tension. Naomi patted my arm. "Don't worry about him," she whispered. "He's just grasping at straws." I forced a small smile. "I know. I'm still relieved we managed even a small guideline. Let's hope it speeds up the next steps." She and I parted ways, each heading to separate vehicles. I shut my car door, then let out a shaky breath. My mind returned to the memory of Derek mocking my age, my business, my entire sense of self. In a way, this fiasco had validated every quiet fear I'd held when I first suspected he was cheating. It still stung in places I hadn't realized were raw. The best antidote to that sting was work. I dashed off to the boutique, arriving just as Rosalie finished reorganizing a row of imported handbags. She stopped to greet me, concern etched across her usual cheerful features. "How'd things go?" she asked quietly. I gave a measured shrug. "He's angrier than ever, but no real resolution." Rosalie patted my shoulder in silent sympathy. "We got busy just after lunch. Lots of supportive ladies dropping by. A few said they heard rumors about Derek's meltdown." That last bit twisted my stomach. "I guess the story's out," I muttered, though part of me felt a strange comfort, knowing I wasn't hiding a secret war anymore. A lull in customers let me slip into my office and sip some water, reliving every irritating moment of that mediation. My desk phone blinked with a voicemail indicator, but I let it sit. I needed quiet. The hush didn't last long, though. Minutes later, I saw an incoming call from Alana, Derek's mother. She'd sent multiple texts the previous evening, each one more frantic. I contemplated ignoring the ring yet again. Then, with a sigh, I answered. Her voice wavered. "Ava, we need to talk about Derek. He's been ranting about your meeting. Says you ambushed him." I stifled a groan. "There was no ambush, Alana. We were in mediation with both lawyers present." She paused. Her next words rushed. "He's convinced you're trying to bury him financially. He's talking about doing something drastic." My grip tightened on the phone. What does that mean? A beat of silence passed, the weight of it pressing into my chest. "I'm not entirely sure," she admitted. "But he kept going on about how if he can't have half your success, maybe you shouldn't have it either." A prickle of unease moved up my spine. I stared at the pictures on my desk. The boutique at its grand opening, a snapshot of me cutting a ribbon with city officials. Should I be worried for my safety? I asked bluntly, unsettled by the chill in my own voice. Alana sounded miserable. "I hope not. But he's resentful. He's convinced everyone is against him. If I were you, I'd keep your guard up." When the call ended, I sat motionless for a few seconds, absorbing the new tension. Would Derek try to harm my property? Show up drunk and furious? He was capable of pettiness, but real violence? I wasn't certain. Yet as I stood and walked back to the front of the store, I resolved not to let fear win. I'd come too far, prepared too thoroughly, to crumble now. If Derek thought intimidation would ensure our next meeting went his way, he was badly mistaken. To be continued.